Hello and welcome to the County Conversation, sponsored by the Cricket Draft, the show where we take the three most interesting stories from the last week of county cricket and give you the inside track to them here. I'm Cameron Ponsonby.
I'm Nick Friend.
Well done, Nick. Perfect. Take two. And our three topics this week are: is this Nottinghamshire's year? Are Leicestershire the funnest team in the country? And how has the launch of Tier 1 gone? Spoiler, I personally think very well. But to kick us off, Nottinghamshire, not atop of the table in Div 1. They've played for 1-2, drawn 2. Last year they finished 8th and only confirmed their survival in the last round of the season. They only had 2 wins all season, so they've matched that already. They beat Durham and Sussex, and their draw with Warwickshire, they were well on top, but basically only didn't win because of the weather. Nick, what's gone right? What has caused this turnaround?
It's fun, isn't it? Because I feel like you look at Notts' squad every year and you go, like, it looks quite strong. Like, there's a lot of guys who play for the Lions, a lot of guys who've grown up being sort of like touted for great things. But you always kind of come back round to this idea that, well, it didn't go great last year, as you said. Like, that they had their guys last year who we've grown up being told are going to be the next Joe Root, are going to bat for England, like all these things. It never quite appears to come to fruition. They don't always seem to match the sort of. They don't always seem to be the sum of their parts. And so I guess you go like what's been different this year to previous years. I mean, like they've got the top wicket taker in the competition, which helps. Folks O'Neill, who they signed. He signed over the winter, and he's gone now. He was only here for 28 days, but actually, I think the 28-day thing speaks really well to what they've done so right in a way, and that those are the, as we spoke about, I think in the first episode of this series, was that overseas stuff, getting that right, and actually finding sort of reliable bargains where you can. Everyone wanted Ferguson Hill, everyone knew who he was, but to get this guy over the line who cleans up in the Shield, on the basis that everyone in Australia has been saying, God, this guy is ideal for county cricket.
Yeah.
Lo and behold, he's taken 21 wickets, 18. He's gone, and now they've done the next bit right. And I think I described it to you earlier as the Mohammed Abbas triangle, didn't I?
You did, and I was very intrigued by that.
Do you not understand what I meant?
I understand it completely, but I want you to explain to the listeners why they should also understand it.
So Mohammed Abbas was obviously with Hampshire till the end of last season, cleaning up. When he left Hampshire, ostensibly because Hampshire knew they had to replace James Vincent's runs, and they would change the way they did things. That there were a lot of I think there was some speculation about quite why he'd left. When it became clear that he left, everyone else wanted him, obviously. Notts among them, Middlesex as well. And there was kind of this weird, I don't know if it's quite a triangle or more of a rhombus between Middlesex, Nottinghamshire, Mohammed Abbas and Dane Patterson. And you ended up in this situation where both teams wanted Abbas, and it was kind of loser gets Dane. And
Poor Dane. He's a good player.
He's brilliant.
Nottinghamshire for ages.
He has, but I suppose the difference here is that they, with the rounds that Nottinghamshire have got Mohammed Abbas for, it works perfectly. Dane Patterson is with Middlesex for the first 7 games, or I guess it's going to end up being from the 3rd to the 7th game, at which point he goes off to the World Championship final, whereas Abbas joins after 28 days, effectively, with Ferguson O'Neill having moved on. Carver Rain has arrived as the keeper batter, strengthen the batting a bit more. Joe Clark's not keeping, so they've got Abbas coming in for O'Neill, and it just gives them that bit that they don't normally have as Notts, which is, because we're going to see it in a few weeks' time. I mean, Notts will lose Josh Tongue. I think we both think, to England at some point.
Yeah,
they've lost Dylan Pennington to a side strain at the moment. From last year, they've lost Luke Fletcher as well, who's moved on. There does always kind of feel there tends to be a drop off, and tends to be a not so much drop off I suppose as a difference in sort of a lack of continuity. And while Abbas is not O'Neill, what they've got is a high class overseas replacing a high class overseas, so they've.
Just if anyone needs a reminder, Mohammed Abbas, 755 first-class wickets at an average of 20.62. I think he speaks
and
to what
he's a genius. He's the best to watch, isn't he?
I always think the bowlers in the professional game I admire the most are seamers who operate in the low 70s. Because
Asif, Philander, Abbas, they're all the best to watch.
Because
they're all the best to watch.
Effectively, they are bowling at a pace which club cricketers recognise or that the top of club cricket recognises. And so you could actually relate to that. You go, all right, that's not going to scare me. And how on
But it is going
earth
to.
do you
But it is
make
going to scare my shin.
how on earth do you make professional cricketers consistently miss balls and nick it if you're bowling at such relatively low speeds? The element, the level of skill that speaks to is remarkable. And yes, they're going to you lose Josh Tongue. We're pretty sure he has. So not to have a break this week. And all indications look towards, if you are in the Zimbabwe squad for the test match at the end of May, you're going to miss round 6 and 7. So we're going into round 5 now. And so Tongue don't have a game. Sorry.
Which is the second of these bye rounds. So
Yes. Sorry.
everyone gets a week off, either the week just gone or the week coming.
Sorry, I've stumbled over my words there. So effectively, Notts don't have a match week 5. Tongue will be in the test squad for the Zimbabwe match, and so he'll miss weeks 6 and 7 to be with England. Abbas comes in. It's just kind of perfect in terms of their balance. They're replacing a seam with a seamer. I do,
And with the weather we've had as well, it's meant that this would not have been on their bingo card a month ago, but they've picked. Last week they picked, and we'll get onto them, they picked Farhan Ahmed, but they picked him with Liam Patterson-White because I suppose conditions, and a lot has fallen in their favour in that. Sorry, a bit's fallen in their favour in that regard. But the other thing I just want to touch on before I think you want to get on fire, don't you? As
yes, I do.
Off spinner. The one thing I would say is that we had. Peter Moores was in the last year of his contract last year, I think, and there was. I suppose this happens when you've been somewhere for a long time and you've not had success for a couple of years. People get a bit twitchy, and there was. I don't think he was the most popular man in Nottingham towards the end of last season, and to the point. I mean, I don't know if this is just coincidence or sort of common strategy, but I can't see any publication online as to Peter Moores' contract extension for this season. I assume he's got one, but it does kind of speak to how they're going. That it's a bit like what we'll get onto in a bit later in the show with Division 2, I think, like that you don't have to, because one season finishes in September and the next one starts in April, you actually don't have to play many games in a 5-month period before things feel very different, and everyone feels very much happier about their life and their situation than the Notts did when they stayed up last round of the season. Only going back 7 months.
So I just want to touch very quickly on kind of Notts had that kind of reputation. They call themselves like the talent factory, or like they've got Kevin Shine there as kind of the bowling coach, and people like Dylan Pennington and Josh Tongue wanted to go to Nottinghamshire to work with him. And that kind of trifecta of Worcestershire signings and Haynes, Tongue and Pennington are now kind of coming of age, as it were. So they're bearing the fruits that they kind of planted in years gone by. But again, like the bonus, and I always think this after like a major tournament with the England football, and they'll finish the 2022 World Cup, and it'll go, cool. And tell you what, let's use the Ashes as an example, because that's actually cricket. England will lose 5-0 away to Australia, and then they'll go, cool, what do you reckon the Ashes lineup will be for the next Test series? And I always think
Jack Haynes is always in it. He's always in it. I'm telling you.
But I always think it's the stupidest exercise, because there's some lad doing his GCSE somewhere in the country at that point that none of us have ever heard of, and then he's going to arrive on the scene and be the best bowler in the country. And now it's Farhan Ahmed. And I know we're not meant to big people up, and I find it very funny that what is an entirely possible scenario is, after picking a 20-year-old spinner with very little first-class experience and recognising the potential pitfalls in that, and that how spinners develop later on in their career, and you need to give these people time, we might just then go on and get excited and pick a 17-year-old spinner, because Farhan Ahmed looks like the real deal. He's only just 17 years old. He has been absolutely phenomenal. I believe James Coyne was at Trent Bridge for the cricketer. That's correct, isn't it, Nick?
Not this round. He's been at Trent Bridge for the cricketer. He's watched a lot of Farhan, and he's spoken to Paul Franks, the assistant coach, as we did on this podcast last year, about Farhan and the development from even as like a 12, 13-year-old. In fact, the cricketer's MD, Jim Heinsohn, who played for Nottinghamshire as a left-arm spinner and still cleans up every year in the Notts Prem, has essentially played against Farhan as he's grown up as a 13-year-old. And I remember being sat with Jim on the first day of this season at Trent Bridge, And I said to Jim, "What do you think of this? What do you think of this kid?" And he just went, "He is bloody brilliant." And
Perfect.
that's a you know, I don't want to call him an old spinner because he's my boss, but that's a man with a lot of experience, of a lot of overs of finger spin, looking at a kid essentially who's watched play since his early teens, and I mean everyone says the same about him, that he's impeccable.
And I think something that was really impressive in his showing against Sussex was the way everyone knows the boundary at Trent Bridge, where the stand kind of cuts across the ground. It can often result in a very lopsided field, in effect. And against a top four of entirely left-handed batters, with the left-hander's leg side, the very short boundary, Farhan Ahmed was given the ball with them trotting along about 5 and over after the first 10 in the second innings, and tasked with keeping the run rate down and holding an end so Nottinghamshire could rotate their three seamers. They've got Brett Hutton, Fergus O'Neill, and Josh Tongue were playing. He bowled 17 overs on the bounce. He finished with 4 for, but more importantly than the 4 for, he went at below 2.5 and over. And he's absolutely fantastic. And he's so different to kind of the spin we associate, not just English spinners with, but spinners in general. The kind of slow walk to the crease, the momentum and the energy and the gather. Yes, we know that's kind of, we think of Jadeja, who walks up there and generates an amazing spin or whatever. Farhan Ahmed just sprints in and lands on a sixpence every time. It's fantastic.
I've got two theories on it, and I don't know if either of them are right. One is that everything you hear of the Ahmed brothers as cricketers, they absolutely love it. They do everything they do with this I guess like this absolute adoration for the game. And we watch Rayan, the way he bats, bowls, fields, all these things. Like it's kind of, you can see it in them, kind of like the just the purpose and the energy they bring to the game. And my other theory is something you grew up bowling off spin. And I wonder if that bit will leave him. I still think he
He'll
runs
stop
up like
running.
somebody. I think he runs up to bowl like somebody who likes bowling off spin, and I
Oh,
wonder
and he'll
and,
start
and I
to
wonder
hate
and I
it.
wonder if that's a I wonder if that's a I mean that's slightly flippantly, but do you know what I mean? There's like a real kiddish energy to
Yeah.
that sort of bound to the crease, and I do slightly wonder whether that will develop and mature into something, I guess, less bouncy as he goes on. But I don't, like, if you know what I mean. But I completely know what you mean. It's the kind of run up you feel like you see more in young players than older players. But maybe that
I
is
guess so,
because he's different.
but now I'm thinking back to Graham Swan, and he had his kind of windmill arms, and he was very boundy and bouncy, and he was old by the time he stopped, or
But
was
from
oldish.
from 90 yards away, watching Farhan, it really looks like he enjoys doing it. If you know
Perfect.
what I mean. And I look at off spinners and think, this is the
You don't
coward's
enjoy it.
choice.
Yeah, awful. Yeah, correct. It is the coward's choice, but I tried everything else. So what do you want from me? Right. Nottinghamshire's closest competitor so far this year is Surrey, who recorded their first win of the season after beating Somerset by 8 wickets at the Oval. Our correspondent George Dobell was there throughout and reports on a brilliant Ben Folkes performance, large crowds in South London, and what was a really disappointing showing from Somerset.
I thought the game at the Oval felt like a bit of a crossroads moment for both sides. For Surrey, it was a case of getting back to winning ways, and they looked the really good team they are. They are going to miss a few players from that side, aren't they, on England call-ups? And I'd still be a little bit worried about their spin attack, but, they're going to be fine. They're going to challenge again. Whether they could win it again, I don't know. But they looked like a good side, and obviously they've got strength in depth there that's very impressive. And just one of the things that really stuck out was their catching right across the pitch. They're taking good catches, which is always a good sign. But the one who really stuck out, not for the first time, is Ben Folkes. He's a genius. He's as good as I've ever seen. And he makes such a difference in taking those half chances. And I think England are absolutely insane not to be thinking about him, because so often you end up having to create 14 or so chances to take 10 wickets. And I actually think he sometimes creates extra chances by the way that he can stand up to the stumps, for example. but he makes the miraculous look ordinary nearly every day of his career, and I couldn't really have more respect for him. What's really lovely is that he's at that stage of his career where he could be full of disappointment and disillusionment, having been dropped by England, but he seems to have gone back to county cricket, redoubled his efforts, and just been as good as ever, which is really lovely to see. And I don't know whether he'll ever get another call up. Probably not, it looks like, at this stage. But he is a bit of a joy to watch, and almost worth the admission money alone. And also on that, everywhere I go to watch county cricket, some places it feels really good, and Trent Bridge isn't bad, Worcester, Taunton, very, very good. But nowhere does it feel more vibrant than the Oval. And I know it's fashionable to knock Surrey, and I know some people don't like them, but I think they're a fantastic club. They produce players, and they make county cricket feel important. And it was a real pleasure to be there this week. I'm worried about Somerset, though. My team, really. They were oddly soft in terms of their batting. Their third day collapse was inexplicably soft and a bit of a worry. I wonder how much they miss Craig Overton. Obviously not his batting so much, but just the fight he engenders in that dressing room. He's nails. I think there's that stat floating around. They haven't won a championship game without him since 2019. Well, I think he'd have demanded a bit more fight from his colleagues as well, had he been there, partly just by example and partly just by, the character he is. But a bit of a worry. I mean, it feels like they've got, I hate to say it, a bit of a popgun attack as well with their seamers. And I think we're going to look back and wonder how they didn't provide the opportunities to Sonny Baker to persuade him to stay. And, I fear they're going to be at the bottom end of the table. And I just wonder, given what they have, whether there would be a sense in producing turning pitches again, maybe not as severe as we saw at times in the past, but turning wickets and using the spin attack they have. And they actually have 4 decent spinners in their squad, and making that their weapon, because at the moment they don't look as if they have very many weapons, and they do have a bit of a soft underbelly. And I take no pleasure in saying it. I still think Tom Lammonby could go a long way in his career. There's loads of talent. Archie Vaughan's very young, and he's clearly going to be very good. But they were alarmingly soft, and it's 4 games without a win. And it's not going to be their year, is it? It's not going to be the year they break that championship duck. I fear it's events at the other end of the table that are going to be the focus of their attention.
The Cricketers' award-winning team brings our subscribers news, features and insight on county and international cricket every single day. You can try us now by signing up for £1. Yes, you heard that correctly, just £1 at thecricketer.com/digital.
Right, from top of the table in Division 1 to top of the table in Division 2 is Leicestershire. Now, we've had the same thought process here, Nick, because I messaged you saying I wanted to chat about them, and then I clicked on Twitter and I saw you'd written about them. Now, I think you've got a much more kind of nuanced...
I was going to say, it's my take more nuanced than you.
Oh,
You've just gone, round at 3. Round's opening, round at 3.
That is my take. That is absolutely it. Congratulations. I like watching people enjoy cricket, enjoy playing cricket. Farhan Ahmed for one, Rayan Ahmed today. It's a great show for the Ahmed brothers. But genuinely, my biggest interest in them is their top 3 is so exciting. Rishi Patel, he came back in the team. He didn't score a bean, but whatever. Sol Bodinger is one of the most chaotic batters in the country.
Yes.
He just tries to belt absolutely everything. And now for their calm, wise head at number 3 is Rayan Ahmed. And I cannot...
Who, of course, was opening the batting while Rishi was...
Exactly. So this has only come to be because Rishi Patel broke his finger in the opening rounds or got an injury. They bumped up Rayan Ahmed to open in his absence. He did very well, got an 80 and 100. Then with Patel coming back, it was like, how do we do this? Best case scenario is Rayan Ahmed at 3. I cannot think of a top 3 anywhere else in the country where I would want to watch that more, basically. Like, that is fun, and there's greater quality elsewhere. There's a top 3s which have international batters throughout, but there it is the box office choice. That's my fun bit. But
And you could not for a second say that we are reactionary on this podcast, because we're doing this podcast after that top three went 35 for 6 at,
Oh,
at
yeah, that's a
Bristol.
good point. Yeah, I thought you were
But
taking the piss out of me. No, yeah, correct. They haven't
No,
had
not. We're not sat here because they all got hundreds. We're sat here because we looked at it and went, "This is bloody good fun." And the easy thing to do when Rishi Patel came back in, genuinely, and I think probably what 17 other counties would have done. Very much. So Rayan got. I guess the background of this that Rayan got 100 last week against Lancashire, wasn't it? Was it Lancs? He got his 100 against. Am I going mad here?
Yeah, it is Lancashire. It was against Saka
yeah.
Mood. Punched his first ball for 4.
So he got 100 against Lancs over the batting. Rishi Patel, who's been a seriously good pickup from Essex over the last few years and has improved every year. He's done a bit of Lions stuff. He's had 100 gig. He's captained Leicestershire in the Blast. He's been a really, really good player. He's got 100 all formats for them. Easy thing to do. Rishi Patel comes back in. Right, Rayan, you drop back down to 6 and 7, where you've kind of lived most of your career. And Ian Holland goes to 3. What Leicester did is went, do you know what, Rayan, you bat 3, and we're just going to go sort of like full-on maverick, like mayhem, top 3. See where we get to. Where they got to was like 18 for 3. but I don't know completely. And let's say I've got an enormous amount of. I was at Bristol on Friday.
Okay, Nick, let's focus this. Leicestershire for ages were really bad. They went winless, I think, in 2013 and 14 or for 2 years. They were kind of known as the basement boys. They're now top of the table in Division 2. How have they turned it around of late?
Right. The reason I was going to say I was at Bristol on Friday is because I sat with their director of cricket, Claude Henderson, who before a long time before that was part of that Leicestershire side that used to win the Blast, and he was really interesting actually. Just the way that he talked about, I suppose, building a squad from as you said, is one of the less fashionable counties, a county whose record is pretty desperate in 4-day cricket for a long period of time, and I guess you could kind of split their side up into 3 main groups. And you've got these sort of youngsters they brought through for England, like and I don't say somehow, but like it's happened very quickly for Rayan and even quicker for Josh Hull. So you've got these guys that are doing a lot of really good work for English cricket with Rayan, Josh Hull, a lad behind him called Alex Green, who is basically the same
He's
as
just
Josh
another
Hull
giant
with his right arm. A giant. Genuinely, I thought Martian Delanga was having a bowl on the outfield at lunch at Bristol. And I got to the end of the day and saw what Martian was wearing and realised that I'd been watching Alex Green bowling in the outfield. They are the same bloke, but 17 years apart. He is, I'm telling you, if this guy keeps fit, and I know that once again, you've just talked about not bigging up teenagers too much.
Yeah,
this guy, England will be like, he's played for the 19s already, and he's on that radar, I suppose, and that pathway. He's really interesting and quick and heavy ball quick as well. But they've got these guys that are doing really good work for English cricket with. But I guess the bit they're doing that's really interesting is sort of the way they've built this squad around them that's very experienced and that's kind of, I don't know, that's sort of like kind of crept up on me a bit in the way that you kind of didn't say, oh, you guys are all playing for Leicester at the same time. Ben Cox, Worcester forever, Ian Holland, born in the US, won Australian Cricket X Factor,
Famous.
played for Hampshire, has played in Major League Cricket, and then he went on loan last year to Leicester, and he's now playing for Leicester permanently. Peter Hanscom, who's played for like 5 counties, didn't score any runs at Middlesex, but they've gone brilliant leader, scored a lot of runs for them, captains them. They've got Shah Massoud arriving in late May. Logan Van Beek is this early season overseas player. Chris Wright, experienced seamer. Ben Mike went off to Yorkshire, has come back. Tom Scriven, I think the story of Tom Scriven is that he'd been around, I get this wrong, I think he was around the 19 setup. I'm fairly sure he was signed by Leicestershire almost like on a whim of, I think Paul Nixon watched him bowl the nets or something. They've had to be very clever and sort of shrewd in the way they've put together this squad. And part I mentioned there with Holland and Sarni originally on loan, they use the loan system better than anyone else. They're the only county, I think, that use the loan system like football uses the loan system. You sign someone from a season, you get mutual benefit out of it. Scott Curry last year came to Leicestershire, took 54 wickets across formats, goes back to, both parties know he's a Hampshire player, he's not going to stay at Leicestershire, goes back to Hampshire this season. If he wasn't injured, he'd have played by now. But he goes back with his reputation enhanced, he got a gig in the hundreds, it works for all parties. Hampshire are pleased he's playing first team cricket, they're pleased he's coming back a better player than he went. Ben Green doesn't play very much red ball cricket at all for Somerset. He cleans up in the blast every year for them. So he's playing the Championship for Leicester. I was at Bristol on Friday when he took his first class FIFA. He's taken 12 wickets so far at 20 odds, and he'll go back to Somerset and play the blast. In the same way that they signed Ian Holland on loan initially, who was basically a squad player, a backup at Hampshire. He now goes, right, I can sign here for 2 years and play for you. And he opens the bowling and he bats at 3. So everyone wins. And that is, and Claude Henderson said to me a few times actually during this chat, he said I asked him about the loan system. He said the thing he hates most is seeing really good players not playing first team cricket. And it's an interesting one because everyone wants depth in their squad. And that's the counterpoint to this, I suppose, which is that the reason teams stockpile, if that's the word, is so that you've got guys to turn to when you need to turn to them. But equally, if you are at one of the less wealthy counties, let's say, like Leicestershire, they're looking around and going, right, who can we bring in that helps them, that helps us, that helps their county? And they do it really, really well. And it's just how football uses the loan system. Cricket, though, just uses it in this weird way, broadly, which is we'll just sign Conor McCurr for a game. We'll take Toby Petman for 2 games. We need a seamer. There is genuinely, this is not an exaggeration, but Conor McCurr did 7 loan spells during his time at Surrey, but never a season-long loan, never half a season. It was always a case of, and this is not an exaggeration, there is a director of cricket's WhatsApp group, which is literally as straightforward as lads who needs a seamer, or guys I need a seamer, who've you got? And that is so unimaginative and boring and very sort of like club cricket sub-pro kind of thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Whereas actually, there is a system here that can benefit everyone. If you take someone like Ben Geddes, who just joined Middlesex from Surrey at the end of last season, he joined Middlesex and played 8 first-class games in his career. He had 2 first-class hundreds at that time, and I'm fairly sure he made his first one in 2022. And you kind of look at that and go, and I know batters are different because everyone's got batters and there's not the same workload management stuff, but who is really winning, in that situation of having... And Ben Geddes, ironically, did do one of these one-game loans at Kent when all their players got injured, and they signed Geddes and Toby Albert together, who played this one-off game in Div 1 for them a couple of years ago. But there is a way that it could be used a lot better. And I really admire the way that Leicester have used it, and more broadly the way that they've made this work for them. They've not accepted, the reputation they had, I suppose. And I think Alfonso Thomas and James Taylor as head coach, assistant coach, have been massive for that. They're both very highly thought of, bright, shrewd, interesting, imaginative young coaches. And yeah, I think we're both really pleased that
It's working.
That it seems to be working out.
Well, to learn more about this, Nick spoke to Fox's captain Lewis Hill, and their chat is coming to you right now.
Thanks to Lewis Hill for joining us, former Leicestershire captain, but a stalwart of the last decade. I mean, literally, it is a decade, isn't it? So it's 10 years this week since you debuted in first class cricket for Leicestershire, and 10 years next month since you hit the winning runs in that. I suppose to end that sort of inauspicious 2-year periods without a first class win. I mean, you've seen the full spectrum.
Yeah, I have. It's interesting. I really remember that Essex game away from home. I can really remember that game. Obviously, I think we needed about 90 overnight going into probably the last day, I think it was. So there was a few nerves. Obviously, it'd been quite a long time before we last won a championship game before that time. So I can really remember the relief in the dressing room after that win. So yeah, I've seen it all in kind of the 10 years.
Don't you must I'm sure you've heard the numbers over the years from that run, most of which you weren't involved in, but it was 993 days, 38 games. Like that must. I mean, looking back at it now from where you are right now, I mean, that must feel an awfully long time ago. But I don't know. I suppose just thinking back to then, that must be a really tricky time because that reputation is hard to shake, isn't it? When you become the team that doesn't win, that's kind of what people know you as.
Yeah, and you still see stuff kind of around now, don't you? Kind of about if we do poorly, it's always kind of aimed at kind of the lower counties, and kind of we always get kind of pulled up in that category. But kind of when I think back, like we had a lot happened around that time as well. I think quite a few guys left in between kind of that period as well. A few guys like think Josh Cobb, and there was about 4 of them
Yeah.
left that year.
Nathan Buck.
It was all I can remember going to training. That's the first time I contract, and you could tell it wasn't quite right. And these guys were kind of like, obviously, people knew they were looking to move on, and then McDonald came in the year after. I think my first officially, I think Andrew McDonald came in, and they brought a few kind of senior guys in signings as well. So yeah, thinking back, it's been that was a tough, and obviously, as you say, I only just kind of caught the end of it. But it was definitely a tough period for the club. But it was nice to kind of get that hood off our back, and kind of you still hear stuff about it, but kind of we're doing really positive at the minute and trying to kind of change the narrative.
And yeah, I mean, obviously, early days. It's still April and played 4 games, but it must be lovely to be, I guess, to be top Division 2 and flying as you are. But I guess also just like more broadly, just it must be nice to be optimistic after a month and know you're doing some really good stuff. 2 wins, couple of draws, unbeaten. Yeah, I mean, like everyone would take that a month ago. So, what is it like, I suppose, to come out of this month kind of in the position you're in?
I Well, first of all, fantastic first month of the year. You can't downgrade that to start the year the way we have. I think Fon said something about people had us kind of at the bottom their pre-season prediction. So to kind of be where we are, and to be fair, the way we're playing the game of cricket at the minute is really exciting and really simple. And Pete's come in, and obviously he's a great guy. He took over the captaincy like brilliantly, and Fons is led us fantastically well. And they've just got simple process goals for us, and not kind of to worry about who we're playing, but to worry about how we're playing, how we're going to do it. And I think that's been a big thing of not focusing on the opposition and kind of do our thing with either bat, ball, or in the field, and just focus on ourselves. And I think it's gone really well so far, and it really positive going into this next kind of block of championship games.
Can I ask? I was fascinated by this back in March when I saw it. But you guys said, when everyone's going off to, Stellenbosch, Abu Dhabi, wherever, you went to Cyprus.
Cyprus, yeah.
What but I assumed that we'd see photos coming out of, I don't know, like, team bonding on the beach and stuff. The only photos that I saw on Leicestershire social accounts were sat in this like conference room, and presumably, like, did you did you get out and about? Like, what was that trip about? I mean, presumably not much cricket played.
No, we've done a few of us were coming back from kind of slight knee injury, so that from a cricket aspect, there was a few guys that needed to kind of get a few physical stuff in and a few overs in, just on a tennis court, basically, just to kind of not high kind of, but more just to get the body moving again for a few of us.
Yeah.
But it was more about fun to do a really good presentation on the things he kind of sees us doing this year and how we're going to kind of value ourselves after each day. Obviously, Pete was still playing in Victoria, so we were missing him, but he kind of got stuff over via Fons, what he's looking for and how he wants us to play our cricket this year. And there's a few kind of we did the runs, there was a gym there, so we still got kind of some physical aspects in there, but it was all about kind of just a bit of team building, team bonding, getting together. It's a long season, and another thing Fon said, he goes, everybody is going to be needed this year, because obviously we've got a smaller squad. I think there's 18, 19 of us off the top of my head, and I think we've already kind of used about 15 guys already. So it's a team effort, and he was very kind of blunt on that everybody will play a part this year because of injuries and so on and so on. So he's kind of been proven right so far, and the kind of things he laid out is he's sticking to, and it's great to kind of be working under him, to be honest with you.
And it looks a fun team. Even when Rishi was injured, when Rishi Patel was injured a couple of weeks ago, and Rehan ended up opening the batting, got his 100, and I guess, but almost more so when Rishi came back in, and I guess most clubs would go, right, well, Rehan, you slot back into 6-7 where you were before, but actually just going with that top 3 of Budinger, Patel, Ahmed, and then kind of having like the experienced, I don't want to say sensible heads, but like the old, I guess the guys who've been around the counter circuit for a while, and yourself, Ian Holland, Hanscom, Cox, like it's a lot of experience there. What's that? What's the vibe like? So it looks like you've got those two sort of ends of the spectrum, I suppose, like really nicely covered.
Yeah, I personally I really enjoy it, if I'm being honest with you, because you're kind of giving the freedom to those three guys at the front to go and kind of express themselves. And as you've seen, I think a couple of the games, I think I've coming in at 4 and Pete at 5. We haven't been into like the 25th, 30th over. And when you kind of openers are doing that, and when they're explosive as they are, you're coming in with a really good platform. And I just think it works really well. You give them like not license, but you give them to express themselves. You've got the guys in the middle order, like you say, probably a little bit of a cooler head, kind of played a lot of games between us now, and I just think the mixture's just working fantastically well. And the senior players, especially with the ball, have been fantastic this year. I really have to say how well they've been doing. Ian Holland was unplayable last week at times on a kind of a bowler friendly wicket, but you still got to do it. But I just think the mixture we've got at the minute is fantastic, and the vibe around the group is brilliant.
I saw a stat. Well, I think I saw a stat. I think the stat's accurate anyway. It feels about right that because you guys have essentially picked. You didn't obviously pick Roman Walker last week, and you had Chris Wright and Josh Hull, but I think a couple of weeks ago when you had Tom Scriven at 11, you
Yeah,
you essentially picked 11 all rounders, and well, no, sorry, 11 batting all rounders, and I think there was something like the gap between the highest average in the team, and the lowest average team was one of the lowest
oh
in
really?
in the smallest and first class history because you've got I think it was Ben Green averaged 19. I can't remember
Yeah,
his average at the top, but essentially there's very little to choose between anyone because you've got a lot of sort of you've got a top order, a lot of middle order batters, and a lot of number eights, and I don't know, like, has that just given a confidence, I suppose, that you can, as you say, you can give the license to the guys at the top, and you know what you've got in the middle, but you also know that you're gonna have to do a lot of work to bowl you guys out.
yeah, definitely. I think there's a few things there. Kind of what we have noticed is, I think you probably look around the county circuit and there's a lot of lower order runs scored. So what we've noticed as well is that the balls this year in the 4 games we've got, if you get to the 50th, 55th over, they seem to go quite soft. By just looking at our innings, I
Mm.
mean, we scored a lot of runs kind of from 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11 with Tom. I think all rounders are massive in county cricket, especially when people getting tired at the end of the day. But for Tom to be 11, I think you've got to have some decent all rounders in there, and I think we've built them up over the years, the all rounders.
Mm.
And most people bat now, but when you've got something like that batting near the bottom, I think it's massive, and it's obviously added as valuable runs over the first few weeks as well. Off the top of my head, I think
Mm.
Chris Wright got 70 first game. I think batting it, he might have been 11 that day. Lower order runs are valuable, but it's not taking away the guys near the top, middle. Still have to kind of take
Yeah.
responsibility as well. It's not about thinking, oh, you've got the guys down there, you can kind of go and do what you want. It's still each person got to take responsibility as well.
Mm. You you were obviously in charge for the One Day Cup win back in 23. Um, Different format and all that, and different team. But how I don't know. Like, does that give you how much? I suppose how much confidence does that give into the club? Because it was. I know no one's won the blast more than Leicestershire, but that was even the last of those three was quite a while ago. And
Yeah.
don't know. Like, do you come in with where you are now? Like, is there a genuine belief that you can sort of stay the course and be in a promotion race come September, but also, yeah, I guess like I suppose know that you've done it and that know you can compete on these fronts.
Yeah, I
So
think
did a lot come from that day?
yeah, massive. Do you know what it does? Kind of, it gives you when you get that feeling of kind of winning a trophy, you want more of it because it was such a special kind of day. And yes, it's the One Day Cup, and obviously the 100 runs alongside it, and so some of the kind of obviously the other players are playing the 100, but you still got to kind of do it. But to to have another day like that in whatever competition, championship, one day again, or the T20, people want it. And to be honest with you, we were in the we drove up to I think it was Cardiff first game, and we actually the highlights were on one of the TVs, so we watched every game. And even just watching it 2 years on, it was just such a special thing. And like you say, it gives belief that you can do it again. Yes, we've had some very good kind of, I think, very shrewd signings coming in the last year or so, year and a half. And very, very. Claude has to take a lot of kind of credit for that, because I think he's been fantastic since he's come in. And made really good signings. Obviously, we've made use of kind of the loan market as well, which is kind of up for debate how that works. Obviously, Ben Green's with us for the first set, and he's a fantastic guy and fit in really well. So I think Claude deserves a lot of credit for that. But it gives you you just want it again when you've had it once. And it gives us belief, as you say, to kind of just keep going on this run, but taking it game by game, as the guys keep saying.
And just finally, for you, you've obviously, you're no longer the captain. I suppose how are you? I mean, you've been very open start of this season about, I guess, like the effects it had on you, the impact of um, the alopecia from the strain of doing it. I mean, are you able to relax a bit now? Do you feel like your old self, as it were?
Yeah, I do. Like I said to you earlier, like I loved it. I love doing it, but the kind of the strain it like took on my body, especially if you look at the 2 years of kind of doing it, there was a lot that happened in the 2 years. If we're being honest, obviously change of head coach, kind of again won the one day trophy 2 months later. Second second part of the year, obviously I didn't do too well myself, and I kind of, and there's a shelf life on it as well. I know we've spoken about that. There's definitely a shelf life on doing that, and if you can do it for 6, 7 years, full credit to you. But I'm loving my cricket again. I couldn't probably say that about last year, if I'm being honest with you. Like, it was a bit of a struggle. Obviously, I'd say I had alopecia, which is kind of, I've obviously lost basically all my hair, and mainly coming from stress, and that was obviously associated with captaincy, kind of dealing with people, dealing with the players. You skipper, you don't kind of you're kind of
You're not looking
making
after
choices
yourself,
on
are you?
kind
It's
of
kind
people's,
of you're
yeah,
kind
you're
of
making
looking after
choices on
everyone
like
else
people's
before.
careers, really, aren't you? With selection, and yeah, it got, to be honest with you, it just got a bit too much for me, to be honest. And kind of when I told him in August, um, that this is kind of going to be my last kind of so last go at doing a captaincy, it was kind of a bit of a relief, to be honest with you. Um, but I loved it. I like it. Also, that ended on kind of me kind of saying, "That's it. I want to kind of get back, just enjoying my cricket, just batting." And it's obviously been quite good at the minute for the start of the year. I feel like my old self. I'm playing. I'm seeing the ball really nicely. But like I said to Claude at the start when I took it, I said, "Look, if you ever don't think that I need to go back to being just a batter, please tell me." And as I say, I've already said like to him how great he's been since he's come in. But during my captaincy, he was fantastic, supported me like you wouldn't know. So I'm really grateful for the opportunity, but I'm also grateful to be back in the ranks and to be under Pete and Fons. It's been fantastic.
And you're churning them out.
Pardon? Yeah,
And you're
it's
churning
coming
them out.
nicely. It's if I could go past 50 one of these next few games, that would be nice. But it's better than getting 0 and 1 and 2 every game, isn't it? But it would be nice to kind of just go on, if I'm being honest.
No, well, Lewis, no, thank you so much for your time, and yeah, thanks for joining us.
No problem.
Thank you very much for Lewis Hill for joining us on the topics of teenagers. 14-year-old of the IPL, literally just scored a 35 ball 100 just now, second fastest in history. So get him in the team with Farhan and Rayan, and we'll have the best under 21 side in history. So I'd mention that.
That's depressing, isn't it?
I saw it in the corner of my eye, and I went, oh, at first I thought it was Drysdale that turned up, and I went, oh, okay. Then I saw it was the kid. Then I saw he'd done it in 35 balls, and then they showed a graphic which said it was the second fastest ever. So anyway, we need to move on.
I played a club game on Saturday, and a guy scored 100 against me who was born in 2011.
Yeah, that's the same as this kid. He was born in
It's so
2012
upsetting.
because he's 14. Right.
I found
Anyway,
it genuinely quite upsetting.
he wasn't alive for Super Saturday and the Mobot. Anyway, the cricket draft sponsors the county conversation. Our tip for for the county cricket draft this week. Unsurprisingly, Leicestershire players. Get them in. Great picks everywhere. Our pick this week is Ian Holland, open the bowling, batting the top order. All go of Logan Van Beek. Josh Hull's now back. He's fit again. And keep an eye on some Derbyshire players. Derbyshire have started very well. Similar tail of the tape to Leicestershire, where historically underperforming county, doing well. We're keeping an eye and we'll be back. Right. Part 3 is on the launch of Tier 1. Spoiler, I think it's been fantastic. Surrey, kind of potentially early season favourites, have been shocked twice. They've lost both of their first 2 games. They lost an all-time finish against Somerset, who got, I think it was 30 off the final 10 balls. Warwickshire and Hampshire tied. There are international cricketers everywhere. For the first time, you feel like I've been checking the scorecards all the time, and there are storylines everywhere to be seen. Heather Knight's batting. Alice Capsey's playing. Dunkley's facing Lauren Bell. Amanda Jade Wellington's playing for Somerset, and she's not even kind of the biggest star. Susie Bates is up at Durham. It's been, personally, a really, really successful start to life. What do you think?
No, I'd broadly agree. I mean, we were both there for that all-time finish. Which, I mean, I think AJ Wellington was, I think she was 24 off 7, wasn't she? And the 7th was a leg by. She had her first 6 balls for 4
Indeed.
to kind of create a win from nowhere. My takeaway from that game, certainly on the field, was that Wellington is, I think, like the best case study for Project Darwin in a way, in that, you know, how many, with all respect to, I guess, like the current English domestic system or the England fringe players, how many, I know Holly Armitage went over and played in the WNCL and scored hundreds this winter, and, you know, George Adams has been over and stuff. But AJ Wellington's like this player. She's a leg spinner who bats at 7, who belts it as a finisher. She's like, and she's probably the second best leggy in world cricket, right? Or third, sorry. I mean, if it depends which order you'd put Alana King, Georgia Wareham, AJ Wellington in. But essentially, she's expendable to Australian cricket. She's not played for Australia for 3 years. And here she is, as you said, the overseas player in this Somerset team, not the biggest name in that Somerset team, but turns up on debut in English cricket's big new start and goes 3 for 24 off 7 balls, upstages Heather Knight, Danny White-Hodge, Alice Capsey, Sphere Dunkley, Bryony Smith, Alice Davis Richardson. It was brilliant. But I think you look at, I looked at Wellington when actually this is what Darwin is trying to create, this sort of depth of player where you've got someone as good as Wellington who is not, I don't want to call it insignificant, but is not a star. You know,
Sure.
Australia have been able to decide that she is not what they need. Whereas if she was English, she is, you know, with the greatest respect to Sarah Glenn, AJ Wellington would be playing for England as the leg spinner right now because of what she offers with the bat, and because she's a bit more of a sort of traditional leggy, I suppose, than what Glenn is. And yeah, actually to see her turn up on that first day, and just commit this complete heist of a win for a team in Somerset who have been pretty unfancied. And I think, to be fair, Somerset will be challenged in a few weeks' time when they do lose Heather Knight and Charlie Dean, particularly, because they are particularly inexperienced. Unlike Surrey, who will lose a lot of their England players, but do have I suppose have devised a squad for that. I mean, their overseas player Amy Hunter has actually sat out the first 2 games.
Yeah.
I mean, and look, you know, while that game was going on, there was a tie at Edgbaston.
Correct.
There have been, I mean, Emily Arlett's 130 from number 7 from 20 for 5. I was going to say yesterday. We're sat here on Monday, so it is yesterday. But so I think Sunday afternoon for Warwickshire to create this win from absolutely nowhere. Emily Arlett never scored 100 before, and she's one of these players who's been on the England fringes for a while as a seamer. If you remember going back to, I think, 2021, she was in the Test squad to play India. Didn't play. I think she got COVID, if I remember correctly. But still hasn't made a debut, which is quite unfortunate with the way that the England women's setup has tended to work. But if she's a seamer who's now scoring hundreds at 7 in a really high standard domestic comp, you know, that changes the game massively for her.
I want to just pick up on, so we're kind of singing its praises at the moment. And I do agree, and I think that is my main takeaway, at least, in that I've just found it entertaining to be watching and following along, because there are these heavy hitters, there are these big showdowns. It's like when the hundreds is round and every scorecard you click on, you go, oh, I recognise these names, and oh, that's interesting. This player who hasn't been involved in England is performing well against these players who have been involved in England. And with the context of this whole kind of England women's reboot, that is incredibly relevant. But there are some teething issues, and you mentioned there, we were both at Beckenham. The opening day, the fixtures were played at Edgbaston, Trent Bridge, Chesterley Street, and Surrey were at Beckenham. Now, Surrey are playing their one-day matches at Beckenham, and they're playing all their T20s at the Oval. Should Surrey have been at the Oval? Now, some of the context here is that Beckenham as a facility basically relies on the income of it being rented out. And so I think, where Kent and the council, I can't remember who strictly owns the facility. It was important for the sake of
Leander. They're called Leander Sport and Leisure, I think, aren't they?
Sure. And then for the sake of the facility, it was important that kind of Surrey kept on using it. So there was an element of compromise there. It isn't as simple as, oh, it's the women's team, we're shoving them out down Kent, even though we're called Surrey. But nevertheless, on opening day, should Surrey have been playing at the Oval? How did you find turning up at Beckenham?
No, I thought Surrey should be in the Oval, and actually, if that is the level of minutiae we're talking for why they're at Beckenham, for a competition that any competition launch relies to a certain extent on optics, doesn't it? And you just, that is not a reason, because it also kind of goes back to the fundamentals of why women's domestic cricket is so far behind men's domestic cricket in the first place, because compromises are made around the women's side. I guess you could ask the question, would Surrey men have played the first game of a brand spanking new 50 over comp at Beckenham? Sure. And the answer is they wouldn't. And the competition that was meant to get past that for me, and I think for a lot of people there, it was a major oversight, because there are bits that are unavoidable. Beckenham is, it's been talked about a lot this winter for what is ostensibly an outground past Crystal Palace's training ground. It's a field. It's a field with a stand, but it's a big old field, and you can't, you can't turn any outground into a professional cricket ground. With the greatest will in the world. We've all been to outgrounds. They're lovely and they're quaint, but they're just not the same, and they're certainly not the same.
Beckenham isn't quaint. Beckenham is a facility. It's a
facility. It is. But it's got one stand over there.
Yeah.
The rest of it's a bank, and then you've got a nice big pavilion on another side. Then you've got the score box. The scoreboard was being pulled by some proper old school score box. There wasn't even someone sat inside. It was standing outside it pulling the chain. It's just there was no this is very sort of media niche. But there was no sort of PMOA area. Essentially, we couldn't go in the pavilion. We couldn't go in the changing rooms. We couldn't walk on the field. But we could walk around the boundary edge and, talk to players like it's real old school county cricket. And I suppose you go back to that question: could Edgbaston, Trent Bridge, Chester Street? Could you have done that there? No. And could you have done that at the Oval? No. And I just thought it was. To be honest, I thought to an extent the occasion was saved by the game, which is what you want, I suppose. But at the same time, I don't think that's a great thing. I think. And also, Kent don't own it, but there's an awful lot of Kent livery around. And really I expected, once I saw that Surrey were playing the few of games there, I did expect Surrey to properly Surreyfy it, for want of a real word. Partly because Kent have made a lot of noise, in the off season about saying they should have had a tier 1 team, and I really did think that we would turn up there to see almost like this redecorated ground, but actually it's the Kent horse.
Paint a picture. The basics of it are
they put Surrey signs in front of Kent signs.
For every Kent sign, there was just a Surrey sign put in front of it. And it's there's a new one.
It felt a bit.
I'm employed by Surrey, so I reckon you take on this one.
No, but this is what I mean about it. Saying it's not, when I said it's not an easy ground to do this to. This is kind of what I meant. It's because it's not, for example, when Middlesex go to Merchant Taylors, they build a cricket ground around a pitch. If you know what I mean, it's a field. But when you go to, as you said, it's a facility. It's already there. It's got Kent and South East Stars are slapped in the indoor school, massive massive logos. And part of the reason for playing there, of course, was that South East Stars did use Beckenham as their home, and I do get that. But go back to that first point. Should Surrey have played their first game as Surrey at the Kia Oval, where Surrey play? Yes, they should. Surrey men weren't playing there. There wasn't a test match being played there. There was, and it's not. And it's easy to say, the pitches come under strain. Bloody hell, where don't pitches come under strain in the English summer? And I know it was tough.
Notts
And
played a few days later at.
no. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
I mean,
so
pitches come under strain everywhere, and I just think it was a misstep. But like I say, where they were. It was salvaged to a large extent by the quality of the game, because it was a brilliant game, and it was also, I would say, in the defence of the crowd numbers, it was a disgusting day, and actually, the other thing I would say is that it is more does go into, because I don't understand that this is Surrey have done an enormous amount of good around the introduction of their women's team, and actually there's a lot more that goes into a tier 1 team than the first match day where you play a game. And
sure.
The quality of the streaming, the quality of the streaming product, for example, was.
Well, that was excellent. I thought the commentators
Was that three of them at least were very good. Don't know who that bloke was. I think what was he called? Cam
No, but
Cam Ponsonby.
I think to wrap things
But
up,
the but
I think
just
the idea.
like just also.
You go, Nick.
Sorry, I was just going to say, just on the other thing I had. Sorry, they've the quality, everything about their winter, their pre-season, the recruitment they've done, the work done by their director of cricket, Emma Calvert, they are very, very, very good, and put together, as I say, they put together a brilliant squad. They're the first team to get their squad sorted. I think, which is why their squad looks so good, and also why they were the favourites. And why it's been a surprise to see them lose twice. So it's not as simple as saying that was poor, they're doing this all wrong. I think it's important to say that.
I think there's also an element of, yes, whilst there was humour in kind of seeing just Surrey signs plopped in front of Kent signs, if that is not going to be the long-term home of Surrey, if you are going to pump cash into somewhere, do you pump cash into the facility that you're using for a year or two when you are going to move everything to the Kia Oval, where they have their changing room set up, and it is very much a split ground now at the Oval. Right, quick note before we move on, for Emma Jones's performance for Glamorgan versus Middlesex in Tier 2. Now, I saw this and I couldn't not mention it. So she only signed on loan from Surrey the day before, so she was wearing someone else's top for the match.
Which baffled me.
Yeah, well, could
I was so confused.
I don't know.
I was so confused while watching it happen. Because Emma Jones, do you know that? So Emma Jones, you'll hear a lot more about her.
Yeah,
she's got an England fast bowling contract.
She was gas.
She was, I believe, she was a veterinary science student at Cambridge.
Okay.
Before signing on loan for Morgan.
Okay. Right, Emma Jones. So opening the bowling, she's taken 3 for 80 off 9 overs, including 20 wides. Her first 4 overs went for 58, but her delivery to get Saskia Hawley is an absolute beauty. So it's real Sean Tate stuff. Then, chasing 290 to win, she's batted at 5 and made 147 not out off 101 balls. The next highest score is 25. So going into the final over, she's on strike with 12 to win, 1 wicket remaining. She hits the ball down the ground.
Two, but number.
No, but I don't understand this. No, this is someone's absence, but then that person didn't bowl. So do you know where she was?
Presumably got injured in the field. I was wondering the same thing. I wasn't there. I was in Derby, but I was following this desperately.
So look, for all intents and purposes, there's 1 wicket remaining because we don't know where the 11th player is. She's on strike. She hits the ball down the ground, turns for 2, and her partner gets run out at the non-striker's end, lose by 11 runs. What a match. I can't imagine the roller coaster of emotions Jones has gone through. You arrive probably on the day, meet your teammates, get handed the new ball. After 4 overs, you're none for 58, and they're going, "Who's this?" And then by the end of the day, they're like, "Oh, she's the best player. They're the best player here." Cool. Right, that's everything for this week. The only other thing I wanted to mention was another name check for Emily Arlott, who put cones down for a run up, which I thought was, I couldn't work out if it was the thing I'd loved or hated the most I'd ever seen ever. Have you seen that?
No.
Oh my goodness me. I implore everyone to look at it.
In the game?
In the game, she placed 3 cones down, 3 flat cones, discs, to maintain a regular run up.
Okay,
And I like, part of me hates it, but part of me is like amazing.
I didn't know you could do that.
I don't know why you can do that. Surely you're not allowed to do that. Anyway,
so, discs makes a lot more sense than cones.
look, there's a lot of things to go, but if you are listening to this and you are
weaving through traffic,
hanging on, get yourself an MV play. Look at Emma Jones's match, her innings, her delivery to Saskia Hawley. Look at Emily Arlott on the Metro Bank One Day Cup Twitter feeds, putting cones down and basically using drills to guide her run up. Go and watch highlights of Ryan Ahmed batting. Go and watch highlights of Farhan Ahmed. It's all been great. It's been the Accounting Conversation. I've been Cameron Ponsonby. Nick's been Nick. Thank you to Lewis Hill and Nick Friend for joining us. And we'll see you and speak to you again next week.